Right. So good morning, everybody. I think looks like everybody has had an opportunity to get onto the audio. We'll get going here. So welcome all to the very informal Threekit and Salesforce CPQ webinar. So purpose of today is we're going to go through a couple slides of Threekit and do a quick introduction to us as a company and a technology. And then also show an integrated demo of Salesforce with Salesforce CPQ with Threekit. So quick round of introductions. My name is John Wright. I'm an account executive here at Threekit based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I have been actually in the product configuration space for about 5 years. So I've been with Threekit for the last year and was part of Steelbrick and Salesforce CPQ for 4 years before that. So I've been working in the Salesforce ecosystem for a total of about 7 years, having been a Salesforce direct rep before the CPQ world. So I'll be going through a couple of slides, and then my colleague Tony will actually be going through the product demonstration. So Tony, if you want to say hello, introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. I work side by side with John on the solution engineering side of the house, and similar to John, prior to joining Threekit, spent a few years at Salesforce CPQ, and prior to that was with Oracle CPQ for a few years. So been in the CPQ space for a little over 7 years now, and joined Threekit a little under a year ago.
Great, thanks, Tony. So as we go through this, please feel free to ask questions via the chat. We'll get to them as best we can. Again, this is a very informal session, so we do want to keep it collaborative. So don't feel like you need to be shy. But I will get right into it. So really why we're here and where this all stems from, Threekit really stems from, and the integration with CPQ is that people's consumer buying habits are changing. They're becoming more interactive and more visual. And that is starting to bleed over into the B2B and business buying environment, right? So what people are doing in their own personal lives, they have an expectation that it can be a similar process in their work life, where we're actually seeing that 83% of buyers point to product images as being the #1 factor in them making a purchasing decision. So that really is not just siloed to consumer anymore. That is now coming over into the business side. And there is an expectation around that, right? That there are going to be visuals and they can get the information from those visuals. Now, the typical B2B sales process, I'm sure many people are familiar with this. You start with contacting sales, either through a phone call or an email or a lead gen form. The customer works with that sales rep to do configuration and quoting. In this instance, most likely Salesforce CPQ. And there's some revisions. There's back and forth around products and options that are going to be added and what different features are going to be added. But it can be challenging for the customer because they're not getting all the information and a clear understanding of what products they're actually purchasing just through line items. This compounds itself when a sales process isn't going direct from a manufacturer to the buyer. When there's different dealers and channel partners involved, people that aren't necessarily as familiar with the product that they're selling. And then ultimately, once that quote is settled upon and that product configuration is settled upon, that's when the signature and project begins, right? But the problem here, as I mentioned, is this process can introduce some friction just because there isn't a crystal clear understanding of the product that buyer is buying. And that's really where Threekit starts to come in. So Threekit ourselves, we are a visualization platform. We're 100% web-based, work on every web browser, every mobile browser, mobile app. It really does not matter. We are totally agnostic there. Now, we have actually been around since 2005. Ben Houston, our founder, he started building the technology, really focused on Hollywood films. And when he built it, he did it with 3 main principles in mind. Number 1 is it had to look really, really good for obvious reasons. Number two is this had to be a technology that could scale. Rather than building a visual asset that had to be changed a million times throughout a film, he created a technology that allows assets to be changed and modified in a very scalable manner. So that was critical. And then number three is that this had to be a platform that was collaborative, where people were working across across the globe in disparate locations, all working on the same visual assets. There had to be one central area for them to work together. It was in 2016 that WebGL became the standard for visualization online. And it was at that point that Ben was approached by companies like Herman Miller and Crate and Barrel, companies that really had large product catalogs that had many different permutations, and it was cost prohibitive for them to manufacture and photograph every possible permutation for them to visualize and put on their website for their customers. So it was at that point that Ben really shifted the focus of the organization and started working to solve business problems. And then it was in 2018 that Threekit really started to ramp up. It was at that point that Threekit actually took a $10 million seed round from a gentleman by the name of Godard Abel. Godard is actually was the CEO of Big Machines CPQ, which was acquired by Oracle. Godard was then the CEO of Steelbrick CPQ, which we all know is now Salesforce CPQ. So today, this is really the third product configuration company, but this time we're just tying some beautiful visuals to it. Threekit now, we have probably about 85 employees, and I would say about 85% of us came from one or both of those configuration companies. So we really do bring a unique skill set when it comes to CPQ and understanding enterprise-grade technology and how to set up and organize and just the inherent challenges that come with CPQ. But we're really marrying it with the beautiful visualization technology that Ben had created. So it really is kind of the best of both worlds. And then it was at the end of, it was late 2019 that Threekit actually did take on a $20 million Series A led by Salesforce Ventures and Shasta Ventures. So really validated us in the marketplace from a technology standpoint, but also just from a fit and a need standpoint. So Threekit, we're not going anywhere at all. Now, how we work with Salesforce CPQ is we actually have a pre-built package to integrate our Threekit 3D configurator into Salesforce CPQ. So now a customer is actually going to be able to see all the different options and add-ons and features in real time that are being built out. So gone are the days where they're looking at line items on a quote and have confusion or any questions about what they're actually getting. Now they actually can see that product itself in 3D. We also do support augmented reality based off of that same 3D model. So now a customer can go and they could configure their medical device, right? Their X-ray machine. Now they can actually have that 3D representation of that X-ray machine and have a link to the augmented reality file on their quote itself. So now they can place that into their space to make sure that it is actually going to fit. And then what we're also seeing is that by enabling this interactive experience, is that we see larger shopping carts or larger quotes and increased conversion rates just by nature of the customer actually having a much better, deeper understanding of the product that they're purchasing. So those are the slides we wanted to get into. Any questions at all, feel free to put in the chat, but I'm going to turn it over to Tony.
Great, thank you, John. Looks like a few others had joined during the introduction there. So one of the first things that John had mentioned, of course, focus of today is going to be Threekit integrated to Salesforce CPQ. But being that it is 100% web-based, namely Threekit being 100% web-based, we can be integrated really anywhere there's an internet connection. So a number of our customers are using various forms of e-commerce tools and different dealer portals, different applications, and different types of websites. And again, since it is all web-based, there's no need to download any additional plugins, no need to download any additional apps on your mobile device, for example. So let's take a look again at specifically Threekit inside of Salesforce CPQ. Now I am going to take for granted a little bit of knowledge of Salesforce and objects, and particularly the quote object within CPQ. And really, we're just going to focus specifically on Threekit and some of the integration to Salesforce today. So you can see here, I do have a shell of a quote currently. I don't have any products at the moment, so I'm going to open up my quote line editor. And Threekit is using the standard CPQ product catalog and product search functions. You can see I don't have any quote lines, I don't have any products. So again, we're going to use our standard CPQ search catalog, but when I choose the product, instead of going into kind of the more traditional bundle configuration, that product option configuration that we're used to, CPQ is actually going to launch its own native external configurator. And in this case, we are embedding Threekit directly into that external configuration. So here is where I can see the full 3D model. I can interact with, zoom in, zoom out, view it from all different angles. In this case, if we have something that's a little bit more involved, maybe we want to view a little bit of an animation so we can see what all the individual components are. And this use case lends itself very well to something maybe a little further downstream, where once the customer has their install base, and maybe from the standpoint of a spare parts order, different work order, those types of use cases directly from the asset record, for example, in the account, customer can select a specific part that they need to replace and request either a quote, work order, whatever the business requirements are for that particular customer. And over on the right-hand side, I also have a few different options to add on some different parts. So let's just go through this, and we can see as I select each of my options, we'll visualize that directly on the engine itself. I've got an alternator, different electric ignition system as well. And part of this is when it comes to visualization, it's not just a matter of wanting to see what's actually being configured and being assembled, but when we have a complex product where there are a lot of special requirements and spatial dependencies, there isn't any way to actually validate that or communicate that with traditional CPQ that is purely attribute driven. And so adding the additional component of visualization really allows the customer to see how anything is going to be impacted from a spatial relationship and a spatial standpoint. So I'll go ahead and save my configuration here. And we'll notice that in the background, what Threekit and CPQ is actually going to do is dynamically add all of those options. So you can kind of faintly see those three in the background. Of course, now we have our 3 quote lines. And what that's allowing me to do is, again, dynamically build my quote lines and dynamically build my bundle inside of Salesforce without having to predefine that bundle structure through product options and features. And the reason we wanted to take that approach is we understand that oftentimes a customer might very literally have hundreds, if not thousands, of different options to choose from. And so creating all of those bundle structures would, of course, be very laborious and not very scalable from a maintenance standpoint, particularly when things are changing very frequently. Options need to be updated, removed, added on a very regular basis. Having to constantly define and redefine those bundle structures, again, we understood wouldn't really be very scalable. And so that's why we opted for that dynamic bundle approach. But as far as Threekit is concerned in the context of basically that internal sales flow of Salesforce CPQ, I have one other example to show when it comes to the community. But now that we've finished the configuration, we're back on the quote. This is where CPQ would once again take over the reins, do anything pricing wise, commercial related, discounts, approval, so on and so forth, would be handled again in CPQ. And so we'll just save out that quote and move on to the next example. And again, as John had mentioned a couple of times, if there are any questions, feel free to jump in at any point. So our second example, again, we also did want to focus on Salesforce communities and basically just being able to enable our dealers and channel partners to sell visually. So we can see here, I am in a Salesforce community. I'm going to jump directly to my quotes here, and very similarly to the previous example, And I don't have any quote lines in here. So let's jump into the quote editor. And this time we've actually also set up guided selling using Salesforce CPQ, just the standard guided selling inside of CPQ. And in this case, I know I'm looking for a hot tub and around the 5 to 6 person range. And that's going to narrow down my product catalog. You can see I had a few dozen back there previously, but let's go ahead and grab this J225. And again, this is going to be very similar from the standpoint of the engine example that we were looking at a moment ago. But what we wanted to emphasize here, some color changes as well as AR, which we'll take a look at in a second. So again, we can see I've got a few different options over here for the shell color, for the cabinet color, the cabinet finish. And you'll notice as I make those selections, right, we'll target very specific pieces of that 3D model. So in this case, my 3D model is constructed of multiple different components, whereas previously the engine had separate parts where we were building a larger configuration. In the case of the hot tub, of course, it is kind of a singular configuration, but within that I can target different components, different pieces of that model to change the material and colors and finishes. Also a couple other options if we wanted to add steps and so forth. But let's go ahead and save our jacuzzi configuration. What we did for the purpose of this demonstration was also included a QR code. So if we wanted to view that in AR for this particular method, again, we used a QR code. But very often what we'll end up doing is rendering that 3D model and configured 3D model. So all of my finishes, whether or not I included steps, we would render that configured 3D model out into an AR format compatible with any iOS or Android device. And a common use case would be to just include that as a downloadable link in the actual output that CPQ ends up producing. So that way, when the customer receives that document via email, they can click on the link directly from their mobile device. And again, without the need for any additional apps or plugins, view that configured product in AR. So we'll take a look at that here, where we can, again, dynamically from the 3D model itself, render that out into an iOS or Android compatible format and launch it directly using the native browsers and apps on your mobile device. So with that, those are the couple of examples we had planned on walking through. We've still got about 10 minutes calendared if there are any questions. Did get one question in the chat of whether Threekit is compatible only with CPQ. So the short answer is no, kind of going back to one of those earlier comments of Threekit being 100% web-based. So that meaning it could be integrated anywhere. We also do have some examples of Threekit being integrated across the Salesforce platform itself. One of those I only alluded to, but being basically a digital asset directly on the account in that install base or asset record. And we also have a couple integrations with Salesforce Commerce Cloud. So again, as long as there is an internet connection, we can embed Threekit directly into whatever that experience is.
Okay, next question we have is this a platform that can be managed by the business? So that actually brings up a very good point. So similarly to how Salesforce CPQ has made something that's traditionally been a very complex process, they've made it something that is more obtainable by different levels of businesses, or different levels and different sizes of businesses. Threekit has taken the same approach where as a company changes and they add new products, new features, new options, things like that, we don't necessarily want it to be a very large and heavy IT burden or lift. And we have built this platform in a way that this can be owned and maintained by the customer if they choose to do so. So them understanding customers understanding how to use the platform and get the most out of it is very important to us. So we always provide documentation, training, everything, so that way a customer can't own this on their own. So unless there are any other questions, so what's next is somebody from the Threekit team will be in touch with you. So thank you very much for joining. And if you would like to set up a call, we absolutely can help facilitate that. You can always learn more about Threekit with Salesforce at the website listed here. So threekit.com/Threekit-for-Salesforce. Or you could always email me directly at jwright@threekit.com. So unless there's anything else, I think everybody might get 5 minutes back. Thank you all very much for joining today. I hope you all found this informative, invaluable, and hope to work with you in the future. Thanks very much.